So, how does a guy like me from Warwickshire in the UK end up living in a place like Brazil? Well, it was never part of the plan. There was never some master life goal to go and experience this country and move here. It all happened quite accidentally, really. And I guess there's a short version, which is I married a Brazilian and we moved to Brazil. And there's a longer version, which has some nice little stories and nice little flourishes. So maybe if you've got a little bit of time, I can tell you about it. To tell you the full story, we need to go back to 2005. 2005, I was a student at the London College of Fashion, studying fashion photography. And my whole life was photography. I was going to be a photographer, fashion photographer, shooting magazine covers, shooting editorial, shooting campaigns. That was it. There was nothing else I wanted to do. Visit Brazil, live in Brazil, no way. I was London. And as all students do, I had a job in a bar. One day on a shift, the door of the bar swung open and in walked this incredibly beautiful Brazilian girl. Now in hindsight, you can look back and see the exact moment your life changed, where the trajectory of your life just went off in a different direction. So I guess you call it the sliding doors moment. And that was mine. Just one random day, working a shift as I usually do, and this girl walks in. And funny story is she'd only been in the UK for 4 hours. She was backpacking around Europe. And we hit it off instantly. And we started dating very quickly. And that was it. I had a Brazilian girlfriend. I was starting to learn about Brazil and Brazilian culture, and she was teaching me some Portuguese words. But there was never any real, you know what, Brazil's where I'm going to be. And a few months went by. We were having a good time, and it got to winter in the UK. And she said, do you know what? I can't hack it. It's too cold. I hate it. I hate waiting at the bus stop in the dark, in the cold, freezing, going to work in a job that I don't like. I'm going back to Brazil. And at that moment, there was no discussion of like, okay, that's it. That's the end. We're gonna break up. So she bought her flight back for January 2006. And I did what any sensible 25-year-old would do. I got my student loan and I bought a flight to Brazil on the same plane as her. I said, do you know what? I wanna see where you're from. I wanna see your culture, your country, your family. And we went there January 2006, and I remember it very clearly. So coming into São Paulo for the first time and just seeing that city sprawl and sprawl and sprawl, all these buildings all dropped in. I said, it reminds me of some kind of real life giant game of Tetris. And then getting off the plane, I viscerally feel it now, is that heat wrapping around you. I think I have to put a note in here saying I wasn't a traveller. The furthest I'd been was maybe Paris or Amsterdam. And to go somewhere as far as Brazil was scary. To be that far away from home and that far out of my comfort zone. I mean, my parents were worried that I was traveling to Brazil. They didn't know what to expect. It was like super foreign, super alien, super dangerous. Anyway, we got into São Paulo and it was crazy and busy, and the buses and the cables hanging from the street. And I went to her auntie's house to stay the night on our first night in São Paulo, and I can remember the way the air felt on my skin. I can remember the feeling of seeing the padarias and going to the supermarket next door and just gazing out on the traffic in São Paulo from this apartment window. And it just felt so different, so beautiful. I'd say I was really enjoying it, but there I was. I'd known this girl for 5 months? And here I was in her auntie's house in São Paulo, wondering what the hell I was doing. And so the very next day, I was going to meet her whole family because we were going to go on a cruise. So we got on a bus to Santos, which again was crazy. All those mountain roads felt really dangerous in this bus going quite fast around all these curves. And I met her parents, and more cousins, and yet more cousins, and the kids of her cousins, and 4 more aunties, and we all went on this cruise ship in in Santos. And so we get on the boat, and this is a nice little story where the universe tells you you're on the right path. That's how I interpret it. So we get on this cruise ship, and she picks up the pamphlet of the cruise, and she turns to me and she says, "You're never going to guess where the captain's from." I said, "Oh no, what? Where's he from?" She said, "He's from your hometown." I said, "No, there's no way the captain is from my hometown." And she said, "Yeah, look at this." And I read it. "He's from my hometown. Wow, oh my God, we've got to go and see him. We've got to go and chat to him." And luckily enough, he does the champagne reception. So he's doing the champagne reception for all the guests. And we just stood there waiting our turn to say hello, and he comes over, "Tudo bom, boa noite." Say, "You don't have to speak Portuguese with me. I'm British." And he's like, "Oh wow, that's amazing, no way." This is a real Brazilian holiday cruise, and maybe Argentinian. I've never, in all the years I've worked on here, had anybody speaking English. So wow, what a coincidence, that's beautiful. I said, it gets better than that. "I'm from the same town as you." And he looks at me and goes, "Wow, small world, how amazing." So he said, "Oh, tell me more. So whereabouts in this town are you from?" I said, "Well, actually, I'm not really from that town. I'm from this small little village all the way over here." And he said, "Oh, really?" He said, so whereabouts in that village are you from?" And I said, "Well, you know this road here, and there's a tiny little road here. Yeah, that's where I'm from." And he looked at me for what felt like quite a long time without saying anything. And then he said, "Are your mum and dad so-and-so?" And I went, "Yeah." And he looks at me again, and he says, "I held you when you were a baby." And we both just stood there in silence, looking at each other for a little while. And my girlfriend and her family stood beside. Everybody just didn't know what to say. We had just been shown how small the world was. An unbelievable coincidence. And for me, I took it as a sign that, okay, maybe I am on the right life path. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And you can look at that in hindsight, you can go over what happened, you can put fate or you can put whatever, but I like to think that this man, who in my first few weeks of life held me safely in his arms at some point, on the first few weeks of my new life going into Brazil, the same man held me safely in his ship, which is quite poetic, it's quite beautiful. It's just a funny little story about my first ever trip to Brazil. Yeah, but after that trip, Brazil still wasn't on the card. It wasn't like, yeah, I'm going to go live in Brazil. Nothing. I went back to London to my studies, and my girlfriend stayed in Brazil. Yet again, we didn't say we're going to break up. We just continued talking to each other on MSN Messenger and things like that. And I did again what any sensible 25-year-old student would do. I scraped together a bunch of money, and I bought another flight to Brazil 2 months later to go and see her. Only this time it was a little bit different because she'd got a job and she was working and she needed to earn money, and I arrived there and she was like, I've literally just got a job for the next 8 days at an event for an international investment bank, and that's in Belo Horizonte at a big expo centre. And I was like, oh, well, okay, that kind of sucks because I'm here just to spend time with you and see you, and you're going to be out from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. and I don't really fancy sitting in the house with your dad who doesn't speak English and I don't speak Portuguese all day on my own. I feel like that's a bit of an annoyance in buying this ticket to come and see you. But fair enough, you've got to work, you've got a job. She's like, look, just come with me, come to the event, hang out, I'll take my breaks with you, I'll eat lunch with you, you can walk around, we'll see each other through the day, it'll be fine. This is where I think I got my first real lesson in Brazil and Brazilian culture and how Brazil works. You see, I went to the event in the morning and I was just having a coffee, chatting to somebody who was registering all the people who were working. Oh, where are you from? What are you doing here? Blah, blah, blah. England. Yeah, I'm a photographer, study photography. She's like, oh, amazing. You know, we're looking for a photographer. We haven't managed to find one because we can't find one who speaks English enough. I was like, oh, okay. She's like, have you got your camera with you? I said no, but then my girlfriend went, oh look, I'll call my dad and he'll bring it over. And that was it. I just turned up at an event, 7 a.m, one random morning, and an hour later, I had a very high paying job being the official photographer for a massive event. No CVs, no interviews, nothing. Just a random conversation, and that felt so Brazilian. Looking back on it, it was very Brazilian. And that was amazing because I was tasked with shadowing the president of this massive bank and going with all these really important delegation, all the government people. I was in rooms with Gilberto Gil and just photographing all these really important people for 8 days. And it paid for my whole trip and more. And it was just really, really interesting, really great fun. And then again, trip ended. I went back to London to my studies. And we didn't break up. There wasn't even any discussion. It was just assumed that things were just going to continue, which is really odd looking back at it. It was just almost a certainty without saying that you're certain. It just existed. So maybe this is more of a love story than it is about how I ended up in Brazil. But after a few months, she was like, okay, I miss you too much. I'm going to come back to London and I want to just move in with you and live with you. And that's what happened. We moved to London, or she moved to London. She came to live with me and that was it. And I was still a student. She was working in a bar, worked in restaurants, worked in hotels. And then I got a job working for Mario Testino, like a dream job, traveling the world as a photography assistant and retoucher and learning everything about the fashion industry. And she got a job. She got a very good job and she became in marketing and we both started becoming successful and our life was in London and we could afford good things and nice apartment and not to buy, to rent in London obviously. And she was getting promoted and she was getting more bigger jobs and new companies, and there was never a discussion to move to Brazil because Brazil was just somewhere I went on holiday. It was just somewhere to go to relax. And then we got married, and we got married in Brazil again because it was a fun place to go and it was a party and all my friends loved to come over and my family to visit Brazil and have a big party. And then we went back to London, to our life, and continued our careers and continued growing. And I was at the very start of my photography career now. I was starting to get clients and clients of my own, and it's a battle, photography. And about a year later, she just said to me, yeah, you know, we're married, I want to have kids. So I want to have kids near my parents in Brazil, so we're moving to Brazil. Just like that. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess we're doing this then. And within, I think, 6 months, she'd gone. And because the company she worked for, out of complete luck, announced they were going to open an office in her hometown of Belo Horizonte. And she got a transfer to help open the office. And she went on ahead and left me in London, waiting for my visa, which I think took about 3 months. And those last 3 months in London in the winter, we gave up our apartment and I moved back to the Midlands with my parents, and I still worked in London, so I was getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning, cycling to the train station in -2 degrees, getting on the train to London with my bike and then cycling like 6 or 7, maybe 10 kilometers all the way from West London to East London to work, finishing work at 7 p.m, getting home at 10 p.m, cycling back to the house and literally just eating dinner and sleeping. It was hard and it was cold. And then I arrived in Brazil and it was incredible. And I had arrived in Brazil, but I had arrived basically leaving my career behind. So that's something I'll go into in a different video, I think, because that is quite a big thing. And that is it. And that is the story of how I met your mother, or rather how I ended up moving to Brazil without even really wanting to, or not wanting to, not expecting to. And it was a long journey. I've lived in Brazil for 13 years now, and I've created basically my whole adult life, my whole professional life here in Brazil. I have Brazilian kids, and my heart is pretty Brazilian, I think, now. It's, yes, that's my journey. That's how I ended up here. More of a love story than a travel story, I think, but yeah, I'm happy. I'm enjoying it. And I've got plenty of other things to say about it. So if you're interested, give me a little subscribe or follow along, because I'm going to be talking from a perspective that you might not hear so much, because I'm not the usual gringo. I didn't come here to escape the rat race. I didn't come here to slow my life down and live on a farm. I arrived here and joined the Brazilian rat race. So thanks for watching if you've got this far, and I'll see you in another video.